Hi, I'm John F. Allen. And I'm R.J. Sullivan. And we're the Two Towers.
But I was writing about it regularly and basically getting ignored. And I was okay with that because I knew eventually the day would come. Well, 3 years ago, Lisa comes to me, the publisher, Lisa Hickey, comes to me and says, I'd like you to do a podcast on climate change. And I'm like, but I thought you already had somebody doing that. She says, it didn't work out. She said, you've been doing this, writing about this when no one else was talking about it. I think you could do a good job. And we have this editor's call we do every week. So I'd been on the editor's call and I'd spoken on the call. And so she's like, I think you could do the show. So I said, okay, let's do that. So 3 years ago, almost to this day, we began writing about and talking about climate change on a call, a special interest group call. And I have to admit that 3 years later, I'm so much more knowledgeable about climate change than I ever was. I mean, and I was knowledgeable then, but I really study it now. I'm deep in it. I'm knowing names and faces and places and reading the books. And so I love it. And it's a thing I'm really passionate about. I think that the world needs to be passionate about. I still write those other articles from time to time. Don't get it twisted. But for me, primarily for the Good Men Project, I'm really focused on climate and climate change. Now, odds are I'm going to be getting a new job title soon. We're going to try and take the shows that we do and integrate them into more of a network feeling kind of thing. So I'll end up being I don't know what you call it, the producer, the executive, not executive. She'd be the publisher. I'd become the executive producer of this network of shows. So we have 4 or 5 shows that we're doing, and I'm trying to figure out how to make them more cohesive and well structured and more interesting to listeners. So that's my mission there now. So I've been there for like 11 years. So basically, as long as the Good Men Project has been there, I was there in some form or another. And that's what I do. And then I also write for Sci-Fi Radio. They used to be called Krypton Radio, but Sci-Fi Radio is now their new moniker. And they write about geek enthusiasm stuff. So movies, comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror. If there's a concept, we talk about it. We talk about the streaming industry, what I call the streaming wars, how companies are fighting to get that last streaming dollar. And so we cover a lot of topics, and I've written there about franchises and what I like or hate. And I'm also the answer man there. So I answer questions that are really weird and people ask me, and if I like them, I write a detailed thing. And I like to do what you do, John. I like to take it and not just say, here's a thing that's happened. What I want to do is explain how that thing happened. Explain not just, the thing that you're looking at, but how we got here. Because it's important to me to talk about how we got to this place. You're looking at a Man of Steel and you're thinking, this is Superman. I'm like, no. This is a Superman. This is not the Superman. And so I want to make that distinction so you understand that he doesn't look like this guy all the time. As a matter of fact, this guy is an aberration of Superman in general. And here's why. And so when I write about, when I wrote about Man of Steel, for example, I wanted to make people clear that this is a different character from what you're used to and why.
Right.
So Sci-Fi Radio is where I do that kind of stuff. And my editor there, Gene Turnbow, is a fan. He loves the work, and he's very supportive, and he supports the writing. And so these are the 2 places I spend a lot of my time writing. I occasionally try to sell them to other articles to Gizmodo or Polygon or whoever else will take them. But this is where I spend the bulk of my time whenever I'm writing as a journalist. That's where I write at.
That's very cool. We sometime in the future we probably need to have you on to talk about some Marvel movie or DC movie or whatever. Just
I do that.
Yeah,
I do that all the time. Matter of fact, I do that with Cosmic Geppetto, or a place I regularly speak on. They're like a podcast like you guys. They have a podcast they do, and I'm considered a fan favorite. So whenever I come on there, I always get good fan response, and people love the work. And we talk about comics and heroes, and we talked about the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier last month, and that just came out. I'm going to promote that again on my feed. So yeah, I have a bunch of places that people call me to come back regularly and write or speak. So yeah, I like to.
That is literally our very next topic too. So John and I are looking forward to sharing our thoughts on that one. It's going to be really, really good. We were very pleased with it. So
was I.
Yes. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Good Men Project, because
from what you laid out, it's something that's very dear to me as a man, as an individual. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, soon to be a woman and a man, because my youngest is the boy, and he will turn 18 next year, which is freakish and scary. But my daughter, she just last month turned 28. So thank you. So, and when they were coming up, I wanted to make sure that they knew that they weren't pigeonholed into gender tropes with regards to, like what you were saying, you know, being the silent but strong type and that type of thing, because they were a boy or a girl. So I kind of wanted to treat them equally in terms of what I taught them. So I didn't like shy my daughter away from going outside and playing sports and playing ball and doing things of that nature. But I also didn't shy my son away from learning how to cook. I let them develop on their own, and I would accept them for whatever they were, whoever they were. But I wanted to let them know that masculinity and femininity they aren't bad things, but you have to define them. Because if you let someone else define them, then they can become bad things. And that's where I think the whole idea of toxic masculinity or toxic femininity come from, because they are tropes based upon old expressions of what things should be and not what they are. And I hate those words. I hate toxic masculinity. I hate toxic femininity because of that purpose. Because you define, I feel like I'm masculine, and I define that in a way that's not like that 50s trope. I cry, I bleed, I hurt, I feel pain, and I express this. But I'm also someone who knows, you know, that doesn't just happen because I'm a male. Women do it too. And then on the flip side of that, but I try to give my son, specifically, since we're talking about Good Men Project, a balance where he doesn't have to feel like he can't cry, but a balance to where he knows that he can handle situations and he doesn't have to cry all the time, because maybe that's not what he needs to be focused on. And thank you for that, because I'm going to be investigating that a lot more. But thank you for presenting that. It sounds like something that I would really like to advocate for.
It's a thing that, and we take writers. If you write and you can present an idea, odds are it will get to show up there. We do our calls every week. So I have a call on Thursday called Climate Change by the Elements. And I do from 5 p.m. PDT to 6 p.m. PDT. We talk about climate change with a bunch of, nowadays they've become the regulars. We have like 10 or 12 people who come on, plus anybody else who's welcome. Everybody's welcome. But the 8 or 10 who come on regularly, we talk about our experience with climate change. We'll talk about a particular topic. Like last week, we talked about fire and the challenges of, because the Bay Area is, you know, this is one of those fire capitals of the world. Mm-hmm. So we talked about fire and what has happened in the past, what the future looks like, and how climate change is affecting it. And it was a great series of shows. We did three-fer, that's what I call them. When we do, there's 3 shows a month, and if I do a three-fer, that is 3 of the same kind of topic, but from different perspectives. Other times we'll just do one show and one topic. And so it just depends. But lately I've been feeling the creative urge. So I've been doing a couple of three-fers. So we are working on, next week, we'll be working on the ocean. There's a bunch of ocean stuff going on, and I want to talk about those things. So that's what we do. I do that every week, and that's my primary contribution. Every now and then Lisa will ask me to write something, and she loves my writing. She knows that writing for the Good Men Project for me is primarily around climate right now. So every week I write a climate-based article. I do my podcast, and that's where the bulk of my energy goes. As far as sci-fi radio, whatever I want to write, I write, and he's like, yes, thank you. And he enjoys it. So, they're very generous in that, they let me be me. When I try writing for other organizations, the first thing they want to do is, well, we need to change your tone, or we need to change your voice. Can you edit this particular perspective? Because we don't think we like that. I'm like, that's literally the whole article, that perspective. You're telling me not to use it. I'll just keep the article. Thank you very much. You guys have a nice day. Peace. and I'm out. You know, when I wrote a thing on what's my boy Luke Cage, and I published it on Polygon. And in the beginning, when I wrote it, they were like, "Well, there's things we disagree with." I'm like, "Look, either he's Luke Cage the way I wrote him, or he'll be Luke Cage I write somewhere else." And they're like, "Okay." So because there's a little controversy in it, but nothing big, nothing major. I mean, nothing that I thought was going to be problematic. But I realize now when you write for a lot of publications, they really want a lot of control. And so if I feel like I have to give up part of my article that is, you know, central to its theme, which is as a Black man and a Black writer, as an older Black writer, as a science fiction writer, I feel strongly about these things, and I wrote about them because I feel strongly about them. And if you don't want to talk about those things so they don't appeal to your audience, whatever your dynamic is, I'm okay with that. Someone else will take it. It's not, I mean, I won't feel broken that you don't want my work because I'm very confident of what I'm doing. And I'm good at what I'm doing. And I know I can give you something your audience will appreciate. And so most of the time when I publish stuff, people do get a good response from it. And so I stop feeling bad about being so adamant about what I feel on my work, because in the beginning I felt bad about that. It's like, well, you know, it's just changed that little thing. But every time I did that, they would change another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. And I was like, you know what? Y'all don't really want my writing. You want me to write something that you want to look the way you want for you. That's not why I write. And so we don't agree. And that's, you know, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that because I feel like what I'm doing is good. I feel like I'm writing about those things people want to see and people want to talk about. And so when I wrote about The Walking Dead, I wrote The Walking Dead No More. That's an article I wrote about the fact that every time a Black guy shows up on The Walking Dead, he's going to get killed. He's going to get killed soon, or he's going to disappear from the scene and we never know why. And that annoyed me. Meanwhile, you know, Daryl just keeps on going. I love that. Don't get it twisted. I love Daryl. Daryl's my man. Nobody shoots a crossbow like Daryl. But it's like, really? Can I get a Black guy that has that same stick-to-itiveness, same, you know, showing up in every episode kind of thing? No, we can't get that. So for me, there was a point when The Walking Dead happened, and I'm done. I just wrote my edit. So I submitted it to Sci-Fi Radio and a couple other places, and nobody wanted it. So I posted it myself on my own board. And then suddenly everybody had a feeling about it. And they started writing me, "You're writing." It's like, how could you say that? I said, look, I explained everything right there. If you can't refute it the way I've written it, don't waste my time. Because I'm clear that I will not be watching The Walking Dead anymore after this point. And I have not. I know something's happened. I know a bunch of things have changed. But I'll never know. Because when I leave you, I'm done with you. If you don't think that I'm valuable enough to write to as a person of color, for example, and to the way they wrote about Black men was not positive. And I felt like I don't have to give you my time, my energy, or my money to deal with, you know, you writing shows that don't talk about me like I'm a whole person, like I matter, like I'm significant. I'm more than just a rap. You know, I'm more than a rapper. I'm more than, you know, a policeman. I'm more than a drug dealer. I'm more than a convict. I'm so many more things than that. I'd like to see more of that. And then we're doing that, so I'm like, I'm done. And that's pretty much how I deal with all media now. If I feel like the only thing you're seeing is the stereotype, I can't be bothered with you because I am more than that.
Amen, brother. Amen. You and I need to talk about a specific topic, not here, afterwards. I got a question for the answer man, but I don't want it on the show. So all right, RJ.
Yes, sir.
Do you have something else?
Oh, you want me to do my number 2?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Or were you trying to cue that up, or did I misunderstand?
No. Go ahead with your number 2 and I'll tie that in. Or you can do an amalgam. Your number 2 and my number 3.
Your number 3.
Okay.
To set it up, yeah.
To set it up, okay, all right. Well, Thaddeus, tell our audience about what Afrofuturism as a genre means to you and what your goals with it might be.
What it means to me? Nothing. I know. How bizarre is that? Here's how that happened. I'm a Black science fiction writer. And for the longest time, the thing that annoyed me the most was that when I get called to a convention, or someone will ask me to come speak at a convention, the first thing they say to me is, "You're an Afrofuturist." And I'm like, no. I'm a speculative fiction writer, science fiction in particular, but I can write almost any genre. I've proven that. You pick a genre, I've written in it. So that's not a problem. So when I say I'm a sci-fi writer or speculative fiction writer, that's what I do. Is Afrofuturism a subset of speculative fiction? Yes. Have I written Afrofuturistic work? Yes. Am I proud of that work? Most definitely. Am I an Afrofuturist? No. I'm a speculative fiction writer. The superset, speculative fiction writer, includes the subset, Afrofuturist. Never confuse one with the other. Because if you say I'm an Afrofuturist, what you're really implying is that I don't write anything else. You're an Afrofuturist, and therefore anything outside of that section you're not interested in. I'm just the opposite. I love blowing up planets. I have no problem with that. I reserve the right as a speculative fiction author to blow up planets if it suits me to do so. Because, that's a tradition. How do you say you're a speculative fiction writer if you haven't blown up at least one planet? At least one. Just
I
one.
understand. Yes.
Just one. So I figure I reserve that right. And so as a writer, you don't get to tell me that I am what you define as a Afrofuturist as if it is all of what I am. The same way I'm being a Black man, I am more than just that. I am a sum of a bunch of things. So as an when people say Thaddeus Howze is an Afrofuturist, I'm like, no. Thaddeus Howze is a speculative fiction writer who also writes Afrofuturistic work. That's the sentence you're looking for. I do not mind speaking on Afrofuturism. African futurism is something else. That's an Educator's thing, and that's hers alone.
Yes.
But because I don't live in Africa, so I don't write from that perspective. But I can write from the perspective of a Black person from the diaspora who has lived all over the world, who has traveled, who has experienced a host of different things, and has a perspective on what I'd like to see in an Afro speculative future development. Sometimes I write those from a story that is purely about people of color. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I'm feeling. But the clarity I always want people to come away with is I write stories that are meaningful to me. Sometimes they are Afrofuturist, sometimes they are not, and I do not feel bad about that. So please don't pigeonhole me. Please don't assume that's all I can talk about. I want to talk about genetic engineering and alien invasion and giant robots and nanotechnology and cosmology and living stars and any number of other things that people come to conventions to learn about or to talk about or to be about. I want that same opportunity. Don't assume that the only thing I can talk about is Afrofuturism, because that's very, very reductionist. I'm so much more than that. So how do I feel about Afrofuturism? It's a living. It's a job. Someone's making a living doing just that. I do not begrudge them that. That's just not what I'm doing. I believe speculative fiction is a huge umbrella, and I like writing under that umbrella. And occasionally, some Afrofuturism will show up, and I'm really pleased with it when I write it, but it isn't what I spend my day doing. I don't focus on that specifically. That's the difference.
I gotcha. So I had a question, sort of a follow-up. I'm going to reposition it based on your answer here. And I think what you said is very fair. I've heard it does seem like if you are Black and you're into speculative fiction of any sort, there's an assumption there that it is reductionist and not at all fair. What I find interesting also is the way media, Hollywood, however you want to label that larger pop culture, has discovered the Black perspective as if this is a brand new thing since Black Panther that is suddenly here. And now they want to cater to it in the speculative area. And it was something that was of no interest before it made $1 billion at the box office.
Get the Oscars. Don't forget those Oscars.
And the Oscars, yes. And the
everybody gets 4 Oscars, right?
That's right. Yeah. No. And so there's a part of me that's very cynical about that and a bit snarky about it. But I am curious if if there has been a legitimate opportunity for you to present and have projects opened up because of your position as being able to offer that perspective, or do you see it in a more kind of a cynical way, that this is just a thing that some people are writing out and it's going to go away? Has that affected you in any personal way as a Black speculative fiction writer?
It has given me many new opportunities. I got to speak, curiously enough, the Museum of Science Fiction before the pandemic actually invited me to come out, and that was nice. I spoke on robots and a bunch of other stuff. So I really, really, really enjoyed that convention. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the ones where I actually flew to Washington, D.C. and stayed in a bed in an Airbnb and just got a chance to go out and meet and mingle. And it was great. It was probably the most fun I had in a while. Got to mingle with a bunch of doctorates, and they were all very official. And so when we were having our Afrofuturist moment, people kept asking me these weird questions. And they were asking me these questions rather than asking the doctorates. And the answer became that their answers were so complicated, no one understood what they were talking about. And I think that being professors, they forget how to teach to an audience that does not know. Being the answer man, that's literally what I do all day long. So people would ask me questions, they would ask them because I could explain to them what they wanted to hear and what they were looking for. And even if they didn't like it, they still could understand it. And so that's when I began to realize that my identity as the answer man had more value than I previously had given it. I've had a lot of opportunities. The Roberson Museum for RoberCon, the Fantasy World Convention let me have a panel there, all through Zoom. They were great panels. People really liked them. The one I did for RoberCon has been great. The one I did for fantasy and science fiction was great. I did one for a recent convention called VirtuousCon, and that is probably my favoriteest of all of the recent ones that I did that I probably wouldn't have had a chance to do if the world were working. So the pandemic, plus the interest in people of color, my relative notoriety as an annoying gadfly on the wall of science fiction, gave me opportunities to do those kinds of things. Has it meant that I've gotten a chance to do anything more substantial? No, I think it's because I'm just not as focused and dedicated to writing like, say, Daniel Jose Older or any number of other Black writers who produce books on a regular basis. It has given them a chance to be seen. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I figure every time they do a good job, I'm that much closer. And I didn't have to do anything but just show up and continue to be great. And eventually either I'll get a shot or I'll write something that someone will want to give a shot. As to whether I think it's going to last, if history is any judge, probably not, just because that's how history is. I always believe that if I want to understand the future, I must understand the past, and Blacks have had opportunities that come into a play, but eventually the landscape whitens again, and then it just stays white for a long time until something Black happens, and then suddenly Black people get a chance to play, and we're having a good time, and then it whitens again. And so, right now we're the thing, we're the color du jour, and that will probably change. Lightning until it's mostly white actors again on TV, and until that changes again. Am I hopeful that it will stay changed longer? Am I hoping that a lot of the talent that I see out there will continue to fight even after the whitening happens again? The answer is yes. I'm hopeful that Issa Rae and any number of other young talented people will continue to push on to have our stories show up as something other than just gangbangers, drug dealers, pimps, pushers, maids. I'm hopeful that these young talents will continue to tell our stories and to tell new stories that showcase us as other than what we've been seen in the past. And I'm confident they will, because they are making waves. They are, Ryan Coogler, Issa Rae. I can't remember the group that made the recent Lovecraftian tale. I'm old.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to take the time to Google it, but
right. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of new talent out there. It's showcasing, it's exploding, it's expanding, and I'm real thrilled with it. And hopefully one day, maybe I too will get a seat at the table and get a chance to. My wife wants me to take a story I wrote in this Hayward's Reach called Bludgeoned and turn it into a screenplay. She feels like it's the perfect screenplay for the world today. It's an alien invasion where the aliens don't want to invade the Earth; they want to enslave it. Because, well, you know, everybody needs labor. So the aliens come to Earth and say, hey, look, you guys are great. You work really hard. Probably not going to live real long in our slave mines, but we think you got a lot to offer. And so they, a scientist who works for the president sits down and reads the codex that the aliens deliver onto Earth. And he finds a clause in it that says that humanity is able to, if it can field an area of contest that they think that they can win, able to challenge the aliens to a contest. And of course, if it's military, it's not going to work. If it's anything dealing with weapons, it's not going to work. So this guy says, how about a baseball game? It's technically a contest.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can learn how to play it, and we'll put our best baseball players up so that if we win, we don't become slaves, we become partners. You don't get to exploit us. We get to decide how we're going to work, and we'll establish a relationship. You can't just come in and turn our people into slaves. And the aliens are like, fair enough. You've chosen the right by conquest. We're going to teach you how to play. So you teach us to play baseball. And of course, the aliens, one of the scenes is the aliens are given a bat. And they're like, yeah, we're going to bludgeon our enemies to death. He's like, no. There'll be no hitting of the enemy. You cannot hit the enemy. It's not for war. This is a tool. And they're like, oh, what is this? So the aliens learn to play baseball. Humanity plays baseball with them. And everyone watches. This is literally the World Series of baseball. Because at the end of this, humanity is free, or it's dying in thousands on a daily basis on some slave planet. So everybody tunes in, and it gets exciting, and the aliens are interested in it, and they enjoy it. And suddenly the aliens decide that maybe humanity has more to offer and shouldn't be enslaved. And we could be partners. Why not? Let's talk about this. You guys have art. We never even heard of art. What is art? So they're like excited to learn about art. And so we eventually, when humans win, we have an exchange versus a subjugation. And my wife likes the story because it is weird. I had a good time writing it, and the president was black. So, so that was her thing. That's what she came over with. She really likes it. And it's one of my favorite stories too, because it is a dark story when you look at the whole nature of it. But at the same time, I'm hopeful that when aliens come to Earth, we are more than just slave labor. There would be or a food group. Neither one of those appeals to me. A food group or slave labor, neither appeals. I'm hoping we will have something that they'll be interested in. And that was my attempt to pitch that.
Wow, and anyone that finds that interesting should contact Thaddeus and ask him to write the screenplay. He's just put the pitch out there, and we're happy to have it here on Two Towers. So that sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Fair enough.
Well, I think that given the time, we may have time for one more question, and then we can do the whole thing. So the last question that I had was, tell us more about your article series, The Writing Craft, Mastering the Urge to Write. How does that work, and where can people check that out?
All right. I'm a writer who pretty much learned to write by imitation. I learned to write, but decades ago, I learned to write by my professor, Jan Wall, but I hadn't had a chance to use it other than for writing proposals and grants and stuff like that. And it worked out really well. I almost got every grant I've ever applied for, every proposal I've ever made went through. And I think part of that's because of how she taught me to write. So I can say that I used what she gave me, even though I didn't recognize it at the time. When I started reading about writing craft, the craft of writing, I was not pleased with what I was finding. I found a lot of it was weird and if you've been trained in this particular jutsu, will you ever be able to write the way that I do? So I'm amazing and you are just a plebeian flea. That's how it came across. I never liked the tone for a lot of these writing groups. And so I wanted to write something. So I started writing just quick essays and started on Quora. Of course, people would ask a question and then I'd write an answer. And I started writing more of these, and then I just started writing them. I didn't even need a question. I would just have an idea and it would just come to me, or I'd be reading in a forum, a writing forum, because I'm a member of a dozen writing forums, and I also have my own, damn it, I'm a science fiction writer, on Facebook. And so when people would ask questions, then I'd write an answer. And then eventually I had 15 or 20 of these things, and they became what I now call writing craft, mastering the urge to write. So it's you can actually go online. If you search for writing craft and search for my name, you can find them. They're already available because they're in a bunch of different places already as a collection. This is just a physical place that you have all the links to each one of the articles. And it doesn't even have all of them because I've got probably 10 more than are currently listed. I think there's like 15 listed there, but I have another 10, 15 more out there. And so what I'd planned to do is to gather them all together and turn them into either a Kindle book or a small writing book on writing. Because what I feel like the difference in how I teach people to write is I want people to be free of the notion that because they're telling a story that is not new, that it has no value. We have this thing where people feel like they want to, if my story isn't unique and never been considered before, I shouldn't write it. And I'm like, no, I have just the opposite perspective. Spending all that time on tvtropes.org taught me there are no new stories. Whew. So that's a burden that, you're free. You don't have to write a new story. Get out there and write your story, because what you're really writing is your story, a story that you thought would be interesting from your perspective about maybe this old nugget of an idea that you hope to take and subvert in some way and make new, a tale that you previously might have seen, but never saw this way. And TV Tropes has shown me that you can take an idea and that idea can be done dozens, and I do mean dozens of ways. And you say, oh, well, I have a unique story idea. It's about this, 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 and this. And TV Trope says, yes. And here go all the other stories that have that exact same trope structure. And You're like, well, I'm not telling anything new. I might as well commit suicide. No, you fool. That means you can write your story because that person took those same tropes that these 11 other writers did and told 11 completely different stories. That means there's room for you. There's room at the end. This is the infinite hotel. There's literally room at the end for every story because every story will be differently handling those permutations, those tropes that already exist. And you're going to tell your story and you're going to free yourself to tell your story. And it's going to be good because you love it, because you believe in it, because you believe that it is right, that you should write it, and it is yours. You can do that. That is writing craft, mastering the urge to write. First goal, free yourself from the preconceived notion that your story must be new, because it isn't going to be new, but it is going to be yours. That is the first step to real mastery, freeing yourself from that preconceived notion. Then I basically take every idea that I've ever had that people have always given me stress over or I couldn't understand and turn it into something that people can feel like they can do this. My whole goal in writing craft is to say, it doesn't matter where you start. It only matters that you begin. You'll get there in time with practice. Here goes some steps that you're going to probably come across and stumble across along the way. And here's what I think you can do to get past them. None of them are insurmountable. None of them will stop you from writing, but all of them can slow your progress if you get caught behind them and don't recognize them for what they are. They're places to learn. They're places to grow. They're places to evolve. There's a place to improve your craft. Writing is that rare thing that it is both an art, something powered by inspiration, but it is also a craft in that the more you work on it, the better you get at it. So writing has that rare distinction of being an art and a craft. And when you're doing it right, you have to bring the two of them together. That's why writing craft that's what my writing craft series is about. bringing the art and the craft together so that you can be inspired to write and yet also recognize that you have to put in the work. There's work. I have 3 million words. You know how I know? Because 750 words is a website, 750 words. I went there, and for 2 years, I wrote something there every day. It had to be a minimum of 750 words. And this service tracked those words and told me how many words I have written. I used that series, that place, until I felt like I had enough words out, more out than in, so that I could start feeling like I was doing something that felt familiar to me. And so writing craft is where I wrote those words, and I pushed those words, and I thought about those words. And some days they were great words, some days they were not great words, but they were always there because I was always committed to doing them. And that was the first part of being a good writer, is to commit to the craft. Every day you got to bang out a sword. Don't have to like that sword, but you got to bang it out. Bang that sword out, learn about it, craft it, work with it, and then, okay, throw it over your shoulder, next sword. And you keep doing that until you get one. You go, ooh, wow, I'm selling this one. And you put it in that bad boy and you sell it somewhere. And that was the whole point of that series of stories. So it's basically a group of nonfiction essays where I talk about writing, the essay craft of writing, the idea of artistic inspiration meeting hard blacksmithing, wordsmithing together. And that was the whole goal of it. And eventually I'll turn it into some kind of handbook or user book. And I don't guarantee that every essay will meet your need. But if you're a new writer, if you basically said, I want to write, I'm an aspiring writer and I'm fearlessly confused about what writing is, this may be what you need, just to give you that chance to center yourself, be at peace with the idea of writing, and then doing it.
And where are these found?
Say again, sir?
Where do we find these essays?
Hold on. Again, you can, if you do a Google search, and I'm going to prove it to myself again. Okay. Type writing craft. Write my name. Let's see, that should be all you need. Okay, so yeah, there are a couple of essays. Writing craft, what no one ever told me. Writing craft, when your muse is on strike. Getting past writer's block. Creative cafe. So you're going to have to add one more then. You're going to have to add Listly. Listy. Listly. There we go. If you write lis.ly there, then you'll find Writing Craft is one of the many publications I have there. And there it is, Writing Craft articles. So you can find them there. And I have, it looks like 10, 11, 12, I have 15 there. So that much is true. Getting past writer's block, your muse is on strike, peering beneath the waves of the Leviathan, research for the win, writers of the 21st century unite. So you want to be a digital storyteller. How do I tell if I'm naturally a good writer? I'm 17 and I'm not famous yet. Blogging and the nascent writer.
I know, right?
Right. Prioritize for success. Welcome to Rutsville, USA. Kill your TV. What no one ever told me. How can an aspiring writer make a name for himself? And on writing speculative fiction. So those are the 15 that are there. I have 10 others that I know exist because I've written them since then. I just haven't put them here. Eventually it will become a publication. And
very good. That sounds fascinating. I need to check that out.
Yeah, they're useful. They're not like, I'm not like Brian Sanderson, who's writing he has a YouTube series where he gets online and talks about. I'm not him yet, but I'm hopeful that the ideas that I have are for that writer who is new, who is wanting to get past their fear of writing enough to push on. And I know it because I was that writer. And so I've pushed past that place, and I want to share what I learned so that I feel like new writers won't struggle on these things that I see people talk about all the time, but very few answers I read have ever satisfied me. So that's the reason I ended up writing these.
Awesome. It's amazing and funny that you mentioned the things that you did, and that's why I was so elated by it, because I was having a conversation this morning with a young writer. And I told him something my grandmother told me. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
Now, I got into a debate with, we will not name this author, but she's somebody of note, and my position has not changed, and she did not change my position, which I think she probably thought she could have, but she didn't. The whole idea behind it is that it's not to say that you shouldn't write, or that your stuff is just, the same as someone else's. But there are going to be elements of your story that have been done before, that have been broached before. What makes it unique in any way is that it's your story, because you're telling it in a way no one else can, based upon your life experience and your perspective. And that's what makes it unique. And that's what I was trying to convey to this person, but they were not really kind of getting where I was coming from. And that was not.
So why? Let me tell you why. Because they make a living promoting the idea that the secret sauce is secret. It's theirs, only theirs. No one else can have my secret sauce. And that's literally how the whole industry has worked for years. And I felt like that whenever I talk to a writer, it's like, hey, give me something useful. And they'll make the magic hand signs and then say something mysterious. And then I'm supposed to get it. If I'm smart enough, I got it. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't make it sound like no one else can do this. Because when you do that, what you do is you undermine the inspirational drive so many young writers have. They want to write. They want to tell stories. But when you make it sound like it's a secret sauce and only the members of the secret club can do the secret handshake and the jutsu signs, when you do that, then you basically deter them from being creative and taking the risk. And I feel like that's the worst thing writers do when they say that it's unique and special and only some people can do it. No, everyone can write. The trick is learning what it takes to be good. Anyone can write, but to be good, I tell people, when you're a writer, what you are doing is you are stealing from people. And people go, what do you mean? You are stealing from them. You're taking their only non-renewable resource and using it for yourself. You're monopolizing it. What is that non-renewable resource? Time. If people take the time to read your stories, the things that you are creating, what you're saying to them is, I'm good enough that I can take the one non-renewable resource you will never get any more of and monopolizing it for however long it takes for the finish your work. That means you need to be good. You're going to take people's time. You should be good. You should master that craft so that when you use up their time, they don't feel like, well, damn, I could have had a V8. Nobody wants that. Nobody ever wants to feel like that. You want to feel like I finished that story and then, ooh, I got a tingle. I like that. That's what you want people to feel. And if you're going to steal people's time, then learn the craft to be good enough so that when you steal their time, they go, I wonder if there's any more time I can give this brother. That's what you want them to feel. You want them to feel like, yeah, I gave him some time and I liked it. Let me find something else he's got. That's what you want. So that's the issue.
So we have no visual going on here, but John and I are sitting here bobbing our heads pretty intensely on this side. So yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So thank you for your time, and thank you for granting us this interview. I had a great time. I can speak for myself here, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us here on the show.
I have a question.
Certainly.
Why don't you guys make a video? Why do you guys make an audio cast? I'm curious. Well,
there are some technical difficulties. I'll post-production this particular question. But there's some technical difficulties that I've been experiencing, and I've got to overcome them. And so while for the sake of productivity and getting things out in some kind of timely manner, we've been doing just strictly the audio. We want to do the video for sure. I mean, look at this backdrop I've got. I mean, hey.
Yeah, well, actually, your both of your offices intrigued me. I was like, ooh, look at all that stuff going on. I'm intrigued right now. You notice you don't see my office.
Right.
Because this is my office. This right here, this is how my space is configured. I don't have a room dedicated to myself. My wife has the bedroom. My son has this room. The other room is her craft room. Therefore, my office has to be partitioned out of the living room. That's okay. I don't mind that because all my books are here and all my stuff is here. And really, my office is here.
Right.
So, I live in my head. Therefore, I don't actually need a space, and that's perfectly okay. But when I need to be alone, I put up my shojis, or if I'm going to do a show, I put up my shojis, and this keeps my space mysterious, like me.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the reason. Believe me, once we overcome this problem, we will be back to video for sure.
Okay. I was just curious. That's
yeah, it's more a technical limitation than a choice, but it's how we keep things rolling for now. We definitely plan to upgrade again. We started out video, so
you did
video, yeah,
years ago, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, I was just curious because I entered the streaming wars, and I'm trying to learn how to use OBS and Streamcast, so there's so many things, and there's so many things you have to know, and doing live casting and video game cast is like, too old, my brain can't handle it. But it's not like it's not impossible. It's just been a struggle because, fortunately for me, I had a career before this. I was an IT guy. So computer technology is my thing. I got all kind of computer technology in this bad boy. I got a computer here. I got 3 monitors. I'm an IT guy. So I have all the IT possible. It's just that there are still branches of IT that I've never spent a lot of time in. So streaming and audio was one of them. So I've recently been streaming. I have a couple of videos of me and my wife talking about stuff, and people laugh at them because they're goofy. And she's too funny. She's not here, but she's too funny. People love listening to her talk about stuff. So we do that, and I tried streaming some video, and so I understand when you say physical limitations. I'm like, yeah, brother, don't I understand? It is not easy to learn all this stuff, and I don't know about you, but I'm 57 years old, so I gotta wake those brain cells up by splashing coffee all over them, and then be like, okay, y'all awake now? And they're like, yep, you're like Hour Man. You've got 1 hour of power. Make it work. And I got to learn everything I can in that hour, because when that hour is out, we're out. And the rest of the day, it's okay. You can mow the lawn, you can empty the trash, you can wash dishes, but you can't do anything harder than this. And it's
right.
like, so believe me, I relate. And I'm an IT guy, and I struggle. So I relate to your, the idea of technical challenges. And I'm always trying to learn more and do more and want more. So I do understand. But if there's ever a time I can help you, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. If nothing else, I'm sure I can point you at a technology that might give you what you're looking for. And if not, we can talk about it together, because what else we got to do? The world is, I'm not going outside.
Nope. Well, that is John's department. Yeah, that's John's department. I'm sure he will happily tap your knowledge base to get us in a better place, and I will leave that conversation to him. But to circle back around, yes, I had a terrific time. I loved learning more about you, Thaddeus. This was a delight for me, and thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for being so generous with your time today.
No, thank you guys for having me, and I appreciate that, getting to spend the time with you guys and talk to you. And now that I've had a chance to meet with you, I'm hoping we'll get the chance to talk again about stuff.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely,
we're writers. We're all writers, so I'm sure that we have more in common than we know. So,
all right,
I'm thrilled to have been here. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll stick around for a minute after the show. I have that burning question I wanted to ask you.
No worries, brother. I'm good.
All right, so this concludes this episode of the Two Towers Talk Show, and I again want to thank our special guest, Thaddeus Howze, for being here. And if you want to know what's going on with me as an author, then you can check me out at johnfallenauthor.com. And where can they find you, RJ?
They can find me at rjsullivanfiction.com. You would think I'd be able to rattle that off the top of my head, but I just had a moment. So, so Thaddeus was talking about pouring coffee on your head, and you only go so long, and then your thought process disappears. We'll attribute it to that. So, rjsullivanfiction.com is where you can find me.
All right. And if you want to know more about the show, you can visit the twotowerstalkshow.com, where we have a blog and where you can find out more about us and what we do and what our mission is. And before we leave, could you give your website address, Thaddeus?
I don't actually have, well, okay, so I have a place called hubcityblues.com. Hubcityblues.com is my author site, and it became my author site because technically that's where I started writing a lot of my stuff. So if you go there, you can see my stuff. There's a bio there once or twice. There's a bunch of books, a bunch of short stories nobody's ever seen because they just haven't been printed, but they are there as well. You can even see some more Clifford Ingram stuff there. And that's primarily where I hang out. I hang out on Twitter, Ebon Storm. And you can find me on Facebook and Quora and the Sci-Fi Stock Exchange, which, like I said, gave me a little award today. I feel so special. And so, you know, I'm all over the internet. If you search for my name, the internet explodes. And then when it resets, you'll be able to see the thousands of pages that I have written something on or other of a variety of topics: science, cosmology, economics, pretty much every topic. Anything that interests me, I write about it at some point. So you're liable to see me in any number of places. That's how I do it.
All right. Well, this concludes this episode of the Two Towers Talk Show. And if you are a nerd of a certain age, you should check out OG Nerds, which is a partial sponsor of the show. OG Nerds is an online presence specifically on Facebook, which caters to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all over 18 are welcome. So definitely check that group out on Facebook and on Twitter. And until next time, stay nerdy. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.